too much noise today. I just need the road, the rain, and the hum of the engine.
Have you ever felt like there's a part of you don't really understand? Like, you're not sure who you really are anymore? I've been there too. Let me share something with you. Maybe it'll help you see things a little clearer. Sometimes I think about how strange it is, this life we live now, where everything feels possible and yet so deeply exhausting. Like, we grew up hearing we could be anything. That if we just worked hard enough, stayed focused, believe in ourselves, the world would open up. And in many ways it did. Look around. People are building empires from their bedrooms, sharing their thoughts with millions online, creating identities out of nothing but pixels and dreams. And I believed it. God, I really did. I clung to that promise like it was salvation. I thought, this is freedom. I don't have to work a soul-crushing 9 to 5 like my parents. I can carve out my own path. No bosses breathing down my neck. No vatequepes. Just me, my vision, and the grind. But here's the thing they never tell you. When everything is possible, nothing feels enough. I used to wake up with this strange mix of excitement and dread. Excitement because, well, maybe today would be the day something finally clicks. Maybe the post goes viral. Maybe the client says yes. Maybe the numbers go up. And dread because what if they didn't? What if I failed? And the worst part? There's no one to blame. No angry boss. No rigid system. Just me. If I didn't succeed, it meant I didn't work hard enough. If I wasn't happy, it meant I wasn't grateful enough. If I burned out, it was because I didn't manage my time right. That's the hidden cost of all this so-called freedom. You carry everything on your shoulders. You become your own jailer. There's this pressure to be your best self all the time. Not just good, the best. Every moment is an opportunity to grow, optimize, improve. Like you're a project, not a person. And suddenly, everything becomes performance. Your body, your career, your joy, your pain. It's all material, all content, all the brand. I remember this one morning, a couple years back. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, scrolling through people's perfectly curated lives. Workout videos, motivational quotes, new launches, smiling faces. And me? I couldn't even bring myself to shower. I felt like I was failing at life before the day even started. And the voice in my head wasn't kind. It wasn't, hey, it's okay to rest. No, it said, you're behind. You're lazy. Look at them. Why can't you be more like that? It's funny, isn't it? We traded in the voice of authority for something much more intimate. Our own inner critic, now weaponized by comparison. What I didn't realize then is that I was living inside a story someone else wrote. A story where worth is measured by output, where silence is suspicious, where success is visible or it doesn't count. And I bought into it so deeply that I couldn't see how it was eating me alive. I wish I could say I had a breakthrough right then, that I put the phone down and changed everything. But that's not how these things go. It was a slow erosion. A quiet ache that turned into a persistent hum. Some days it still hums. But at some point I started asking questions. Like, who benefits from me believing I'm never enough? That question cracked something open. And I want to say this to you, in case you've been carrying that same invisible weight. You're not broken for feeling tired. You're not weak for wanting to stop. You're not failing because you haven't figured it out yet. This system we live in, it's designed to keep you reaching endlessly. It's not your fault that you feel like you're drowning in possibility. I've come to think of it like this. The freedom we're sold is like a glittering maze. You think you're making choices, but the walls are built to lead you back to the same place. Constant striving, constant proving. And when you start to feel like maybe, just maybe, this isn't what you signed up for, the world whispers, try harder. But maybe the real rebellion is in whispering back, no? So yeah, I'm still in the maze sometimes. But I've started to trace the walls, to see the patterns, and to pause when everything in me says, go faster. Because I'm learning that slowing down isn't failure. It's the first step to seeing clearly. And if you're feeling what I'm feeling, if any of this touches a part of you that's been too quiet for too long, then maybe we're both on the edge of something real, something worth slowing down for. I want to tell you something that took me a long time to admit. I became my own worst boss. Not in a cute, quirky, I run my own life kind of way, but in a brutal, relentless, joyless kind of way. No one stood over me demanding results. No one sent threatening emails or shouted from across a desk. The pressure came from inside, that whisper in my mind that said, "You can't stop now. You haven't earned it. Keep going." I started treating rest like a reward I hadn't yet deserved. Like if I just pushed a little harder, produced a little more, then I could breathe. But that breath never came. It's strange because on the surface, I looked free. I wasn't tied to anyone's rules. I set my own schedule. I chose my path, and yet I felt more trapped than ever. I'd sit at my desk, eyes burning from screen time, scrolling through endless tabs, juggling a dozen tasks, and still feel like I hadn't done enough. There was no end point, no finish line, just this invisible bar I kept raising higher and higher until it felt unreachable. I think we underestimate how much we internalize the world around us. It's not just advertisements or influencers or motivational videos. It's the whole rhythm of modern life. Always accelerating, always demanding, always comparing. The moment you pause, it feels like you're falling behind. I remember one day walking into a co-working space and seeing all these people, tapping on keyboards, taking calls, looking polished and purposeful. Everyone looked so focused, so productive, and I felt this wave of shame, like I was faking it. Like I didn't belong there unless I was grinding just as hard. So I sat down, opened my laptop, and pretended. Pretended to be busy. Pretended to be thriving. It's wild, right? We've built a world where pretending to be productive feels safer than admitting we're tired. I started noticing how deeply we all perform. Not just online, but in real life. Smiling through burnout. Nodding in meetings we don't care about. Saying, "I'm fine," when our insides are unraveling. We've learned to wear achievement like armor. Because if you take it off, if you show up empty, confused, raw, it feels like failure. And no one wants to be seen as failing in a world that worships success. But here's the secret no one wants to say out loud. Most of us are tired. Deeply tired. Not just sleepy, soul tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of performing. Tired of chasing a version of ourselves that was never ours to begin with. I used to think self-discipline was the highest virtue. Wake up early. Hustle harder. Kill your distractions. Optimize every second. But it started to feel like I was slicing myself into pieces, trying to fit into this image of who I should be, and losing touch with who I actually am. There's this idea that if we just perfect the system, the planner, the habits, the goals, we'll finally feel okay. But what if the system itself is broken? What if we were never meant to operate like machines? Some days, I look at animals or children and feel a strange envy. They live without the constant pressure to be useful. They rest when they're tired. They play without guilt. They exist without having to justify their existence. Imagine that. When did being just human stop being enough? It's taken me a long time to start unlearning the belief that I have to earn my place in the world through output, that my worth is tied to my productivity, that rest is laziness, that slowing down is failure. Because it's not, and neither are you. You're not lazy for needing rest. You're not broken because you can't keep up with the speed of a world that's lost its mind. You're not weak for feeling like you can't do it all. You're human, and maybe that's enough. Maybe more than enough. There's a quiet kind of strength in saying, I can't keep living like this. In stepping back and asking, why do I believe I always have to be doing something? I don't have all the answers. I'm still figuring it out, step by step. But I can tell you this. The moment I started listening to the voice beneath the noise, the soft, tired, honest voice, things began to shift. I started to feel real again. And if you're reading this, if some part of you is nodding along or sighing in recognition, then maybe you're hearing it too. That voice. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we started listening. I used to think that being positive all the time was the goal. Like if I could just stay in a good headspace, grateful, driven, focused, then I'd be unstoppable. I surrounded myself with motivational quotes, wrote affirmations on sticky notes, smiled through the stress, pushed through exhaustion. Because that's what winners do, right? They don't complain. They don't slow down. They don't let doubt in. But I'll be honest with you, that kind of positivity eventually started to feel like a prison. I remember this one weekend when I had absolutely nothing left in me. My body was drained, my mind foggy, and all I wanted was to lie in bed and just be. But I couldn't. Not without guilt gnawing at me. Not without hearing that inner voice whisper, "You're wasting time. Other people are working right now. You're falling behind." So I dragged myself out of bed, opened my laptop, tried to force creativity, force clarity, force results. Nothing came. I wasn't okay, but I kept pretending I was. And no one knew because on the outside, I still posted the right things. Smiled at the right moments. Kept up the rhythm of a person who has it all together. That's the trap, isn't it? This culture of constant positivity, where the moment you admit you're struggling, people look at you like you're broken or weak. As if struggle isn't part of being alive. But it is. It always has been. Somewhere along the line, we confused strength with silence. We started believing that being tired, uncertain, or sad was a flaw, something to fix, not feel. We were told to vibrate higher, trust the process, manifest abundance. And while those things aren't bad in themselves, they can become weapons when used to shame our very real, very human pain. I started noticing it everywhere. In the way people avoid uncomfortable conversations. In the way they deflect real emotion with surface-level cheer. In how we turn suffering into a branding opportunity, a lesson, a journey, something we can wrap in a neat caption and share for likes. But real healing doesn't look like that. It's messy, quiet, unphotogenic. It looks like breaking down on a Tuesday afternoon for no apparent reason. Like canceling plans because you just can't pretend to be okay that day. Like staring at the ceiling wondering what the hell you're doing with your life and letting that be enough for the moment. You know what I've realized? There's something sacred about the pause, about sitting in the discomfort instead of running from it, about allowing yourself to feel whatever's there, the exhaustion, the fear, the grief, the ache, without trying to reframe it as something positive right away. Because not everything needs to be a lesson. Some things just need to be felt. And that's what the tyranny of positivity steals from us. The permission to be real. I used to chase this version of myself. Always energized, always productive, always on. But that person wasn't real. She was a mask I wore to survive a world that doesn't know what to do with softness, with slowness, with sorrow. But I'm learning, slowly, that strength doesn't mean pretending everything's okay. Sometimes strength is saying, today I can't. Sometimes it's asking for help, or saying no, or simply breathing through the weight in your chest without trying to make it disappear. We are not machines. We are not meant to be on all the time. And honestly, the people I admire most now, they're not the ones who radiate endless energy and hustle. They're the ones who are honest, who show up as they are, who let you see the cracks, not because they're proud of them, but because they're done hiding. So if today you're tired, if you feel heavy or slow or unsure, that's okay. That's human. And you don't have to earn your right to rest. You don't need to justify your feelings. You don't owe the world a smile if what you really need is space. You're allowed to be exactly where you are, without fixing, without faking, without forcing. That, my friend, is what I've started calling real freedom. Not the kind sold in self-help books or personal development conferences, but the quiet, radical kind that says, I accept myself even when I'm not okay, especially then. And when we do that, when we give ourselves permission to rest, to be honest, to feel, something begins to shift. It's like a knot loosens, a breath deepens, a bit of light creeps in through the cracks. Not because we made it happen, but because we finally stopped trying so hard to hold it all together. There was a time when I thought I was free. Free to choose my path, set my goals, shape my life. I wasn't under anyone's control. No boss breathing down my neck. No strict dress code. No one telling me when to eat, sleep, or take a vacation. I thought this is it. I made it. Even escaped. But that freedom turned out to be something else entirely. It was subtle. Sneaky. It wrapped itself around my routines, my decisions, my dreams, and it whispered, you could do anything, so you should be doing everything. And I believed it. I bought into the illusion that productivity was liberation. That self-mastery meant self-discipline without mercy. That freedom meant being constantly in motion, always creating, always improving, always proving. But over time, I began to notice how many of us were living in the same illusion. How we traded cages of iron for cages made of mirrors. There are no bars anymore, just endless reflections of who we should be. Healthier, wealthier, more focused, more aligned, better. And yet, despite all this supposed freedom, I felt trapped. Like I was spinning in circles in a room with no walls. Not because I was forced to, but because I'd forgotten how to be still. I saw it in others too. Friends who couldn't sit through a dinner without checking their phones. Colleagues who smiled too wide at Monday meetings while dying inside. Strangers in coffee shops with 10 tabs open, jumping from one task to the next, sipping lukewarm lattes that tasted like deadlines. It was everywhere. This hunger, this pressure, this deep-rooted fear of not doing enough, not being enough, not becoming enough. We called it ambition, but honestly, it felt like captivity. There's this philosopher, Michel Foucault, who wrote about how society used to control people through institutions, prisons, factories, schools, places where power was visible, where rules were clear. But now things have changed. The spaces that shape us aren't so obvious anymore. They're dressed up as freedom. Gyms, airports, co-working spaces, social media apps, branding seminars, places that tell us, come here, improve yourself, level up, don't stop. They don't chain us. They seduce us. And that's the trick. We believe we're choosing all of this. That's the part that's hardest to admit. That maybe the system didn't force this on us. Maybe it made us want it. Maybe we became our own enforcers, our own bosses, our own judges, and maybe our own jailers. That realization hit me one afternoon when I was walking through a park. The air was warm, the lights soft, and for the first time in days, I didn't have my earbuds in. No podcast, no productivity playlist, just me, the trees, and the wind. And I realized I didn't know how to be anymore without a purpose attached to it. I couldn't just walk for the sake of walking. I felt like I was wasting time. I kept reaching for my phone, itching to check something, anything to justify the moment. That's when I knew something had to change. I had mistaken movement for meaning, speed for progress, choice for freedom. But freedom isn't just about what we're allowed to do. It's about whether we feel safe doing nothing. It's about whether we can exist, just exist, without guilt or shame or the need to explain ourselves. And that's the kind of freedom I'm trying to reclaim now. It doesn't come from apps or morning routines or 5-year plans. It comes in those quiet, inconvenient moments when you choose rest over results, presence over performance, wholeness over hustle. It's not easy. God, it's not easy. Everything in this world is designed to pull us away from that, to keep us scrolling, clicking, striving. But every time I pause, really pause, I get a glimpse of something deeper. A stillness idefuruten. A softness I didn't know I needed. A truth I'd buried under all the noise. That I'm not a product. I'm not a project. I am a person. And so are you. So if today you feel like the world is spinning too fast, if your chest tightens every time you open your calendar, if you're so used to saying I'm fine that you've forgotten what not fine even feels like, just know you're not alone. And more importantly, you don't have to live like this. You don't have to earn your right to breathe, to rest, to be. You already have it, even if you've forgotten, even if the world forgot to tell you. I used to think burnout was something that happened to people who hated their jobs, like corporate drones in soul-sucking offices. People stuck in roles they didn't choose. People who were overworked by someone else. I never imagined it could happen to me. Someone who followed their passion, who built their own path, who loved what they did. But that's the irony, isn't it? When you pour your whole self into something, it's not just your energy that drains. It's your sense of self that begins to dissolve. There was a season in my life when I woke up every day already exhausted. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I'd open my eyes and immediately feel behind. Behind on emails, behind on deadlines, behind on life. And the worst part? I didn't even know what I was chasing anymore. Burnout doesn't come with fanfare. It sneaks in quietly. At first, it looks like just being busy. Then it turns into procrastination. Then numbness. Then dread. And before you know it, even the things you once loved feel heavy in your hands. You start to resent your own dreams. That was the hardest part for me. Realizing that something I once felt so passionate about had become a source of anxiety. I couldn't tell if I was tired of the work or just tired of being tired. Everything blurred together. And all I could think was, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just push through like before? But that's the thing no one tells you. Burnout isn't a personal failure. It's not about weakness. It's not about not wanting it badly enough. It's a natural response to unnatural pressure. We live in a world that demands constant output, as if we were factories instead of humans. We're expected to always be producing something: content, value, energy, progress. And when we can't, we internalize it. We think we're the problem, but we're not. We're simply tired in a world that doesn't know how to stop. I remember sitting in front of my computer one evening, just staring at the screen. I had a long list of tasks, deadlines creeping up, notifications piling in, and all I could do was sit there, frozen. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. I had pushed for so long, ignored the signals for so long, that my body finally said, no more. It was terrifying, this feeling of being completely depleted, of having nothing left to give. And even scarier was how invisible it all was. No one could see how hard I was falling apart inside. I still looked fine, still showed up, still smiled, but I was running on fumes. And here's what's worse. In burnout, rest isn't even restful. You try to take a break, but your mind keeps racing. Your guilt keeps whispering. You lie down, but you don't relax. You pause, but you don't feel peace. You feel like a machine trying to shut down, but the system keeps glitching. That's when I knew something was deeply wrong. Not just with me, but with the whole culture around me. We celebrate overwork, glorify hustle, romanticize being so busy, and all the while, we're breaking. Quietly, collectively. I don't have a magic fix for burnout, but I've learned that the path out doesn't look like another productivity hack or morning routine. It starts with something quieter, something slower. It starts with permission. Permission to not be okay. Permission to stop performing. Permission to let go of the image of who you think you should be. And to sit gently with who you actually are, especially when you feel broken. For me, the healing didn't happen in one big moment. It happened in small choices. Turning off notifications. Saying no to opportunities that drain me. Letting go of guilt when I needed rest. Taking walks without turning them into steps goals. Sitting in silence without filling it with podcasts or checklists or plans. I began to ask myself a different question. Not what more can I do, but what can I release? And slowly, very slowly, the fog began to lift. I'm still learning to live differently. To resist the pressure to always perform. To remember that I'm not here to impress the world. I'm here to live. Fully, gently, honestly. And you are too. So if you're burnt out, if the light inside you feels dim, know this. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are carrying too much in a world that asks too much and gives too little in return. And you are allowed to set it down, even if just for a moment. Because sometimes that moment becomes the beginning of something new. Something softer. Something true. I don't know exactly what happened, when I stopped feeling truly connected to the people around me. It was subtle at first. I'd meet up with friends and feel like we were talking at each other instead of with each other. Conversations skimmed the surface. Work updates, vacation plans, the latest shows. We were sharing, but not really feeling anything together. And the irony? I was connected more than ever. Messages, group chats, likes, tags, it was constant. My phone buzzed like I mattered. But inside, I felt oddly alone. I think we've all felt that, haven't we? This strange loneliness that doesn't come from being physically isolated, but from feeling emotionally invisible. We've built a world obsessed with appearances. We polish our profiles, curate our stories, present our best selves in tiny, digestible snapshots. And somewhere in all that effort to be seen, we forgot how to be known. I didn't even realize how much I was performing until I started catching myself editing my words before I spoke. Not for clarity, but for perception. Would this sound wise? Will they think I'm doing okay? Is this shareable? I was filtering even my most vulnerable moments through the lens of social acceptance. And the deeper I sank into that, the more hollow I felt. Byung-Chul Han talks about how this society of performance and productivity has turned even our relationships into transactions. We approach others not with curiosity, but with expectations. We look for validation, not connection. And over time, we start treating ourselves the same way, as brands, not beings. I'll never forget the night it really hit me. I was scrolling through my feed, half asleep, watching people I hadn't talked to in years share their highlights. A new job, a retreat in Bali, a wedding announcement. Everyone seemed to be glowing, thriving, and I felt this sudden pang, not of jealousy, but of grief, like I had lost something I couldn't name. That night, I closed my phone and sat in the dark for a while. No music, no distraction, just silence. And it was loud. It was the kind of silence that makes you realize how long you've been running from yourself. That's when I knew. I wasn't just burnt out. I was fragmented, scattered. I had spent so much time trying to be everywhere, for everyone, in every role that I didn't know where I was anymore. And that fragmentation, it's not just emotional. It's neurological. The constant switching between apps, the pinging of notifications, the endless tabs, it trains our brains to stay on the surface. We skim instead of sink. We react instead of reflect. We confuse stimulation for meaning. But meaning takes time. Depth takes time. Connection, real connection, takes presence. And presence is the very thing we've forgotten how to give. I started small. I began putting my phone in another room when I ate. I gave myself permission to reply to messages later or not at all. I asked friends deeper questions, even if they felt awkward. And most of all, I practiced listening. Not just to others, but to myself. What did I actually want to say? What did I actually feel? Who was I underneath all the noise? It's not easy. Sometimes I still catch myself reaching for my phone when a moment gets quiet. Sometimes I still feel the pull to prove something, to be seen in a certain way. But I'm learning to notice it, to pause, to breathe, because I don't want a life that looks good. I want a life that feels true. And I want relationships where I don't have to be on, where I can be messy, confused, raw, where I can show up with all the parts of me, even the ones that aren't impressive or inspiring or filtered just right. That's the kind of intimacy we're starving for. Not more followers, not more messages, but more moments that remind us you're not alone in this. So if you've been feeling disconnected, not just from others, but from yourself, know that there's a way back. It starts with turning down the volume of the world. It continues with offering yourself presence, even when it's uncomfortable. And maybe, in the quiet that follows, you'll start to remember who you really are. Not who you're supposed to be, not who they expect you to be, but the you that's been waiting patiently beneath all the noise. The you that doesn't need to perform. The you that just wants to be. The more I sat with all of this, the exhaustion, the disconnection, the endless pressure to become someone, the more I realized how far I had drifted from myself. And I think that's the real cost no one talks about. Not just the burnout, not just the anxiety or loneliness, but the quiet, aching loss of who you are when you spend too long trying to become everything else. There's a kind of grief in that. A grief for the you that used to laugh without checking who was watching. The you that could spend a whole afternoon dreaming without guilt. The you that moved slowly, naturally, not because you were lazy, but because you were alive. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that stillness was weakness. That if you're not striving, you're falling behind. That value must be earned, constantly, loudly, visibly. But what if the bravest thing you can do in a world obsessed with movement is to be still? What if real rebellion isn't in running faster, but in stopping? Stopping to breathe, stopping to feel, stopping to remember. I don't mean the kind of break that's just a pause before you launch into the next hustle. I mean real rest, the kind that isn't about recovery, but but about reconnection, about giving yourself permission to exist without a purpose. The kind of rest where you stop asking, "What should I be doing?" and start wondering, "What have I forgotten to feel?" For me, that shift began with boredom. Strange, right? But boredom was something I had avoided for years. I filled every silent second with noise, podcasts, playlists, updates, endless input. I told myself I was learning, growing, optimizing. But in truth, I was just running. Boredom scared me because it forced me to listen to the parts of me I'd neglected. The parts that didn't want more. The parts that whispered things like slow down. Let go. You're already enough. And once I finally let myself be bored, I started to remember what it felt like to be human again. Not a brand, not a machine, not a mission, just human. I found myself watching the way light moved across my floor in the late afternoon. I noticed how my breathing slowed when I sat by the window. I began writing again, not to publish, not to prove anything, but just to hear my own voice, the real one. And I began to see rest not as the opposite of productivity, but as its foundation. Because without rest, there is no clarity. Without pause, there is no meaning. Without stillness, there is no self. And that's what I want you to remember, especially if you've forgotten what it feels like to just be. You don't have to keep pushing. You don't have to prove your worth by what you achieve. You don't have to earn your own care. You're allowed to stop, to breathe, to feel lost for a while, to not know what's next, to turn away from the noise and towards something quieter, something real. This world may never give you permission to rest, to slow down, to choose gentleness over achievement. But you can give that permission to yourself. You can choose to honor your limits. You can choose to protect your attention. You can choose to return, not to who you were before the burnout, but to someone deeper, someone softer, someone more you. I don't know what your version of rest looks like. Maybe it's a long walk with no destination. Maybe it's deleting the apps that shout for your attention. Maybe it's sitting with a cup of tea in silence, listening for the parts of yourself you haven't heard in a while. Whatever it is, start there. Start small. Start real. Because underneath all the noise, all the striving, all the stories we've been told about what it means to matter, there's a truth that waits for you. A truth that says, you are already enough. Right here, as you are. No more becoming. Just being. And that, my friend, is where the real beginning lives. If this felt meaningful to you, it might mean something to someone else too. So hit like, leave a comment, or subscribe. That's how YouTube knows to share it with others. Maybe together, we can help someone see things a little differently.